Alexander the Great burned their capital to the ground. The Arab armies shattered their empire and imposed a new faith. The Mongols stacked the skulls of their scholars into pyramids and turned their cities into graveyards. The Turks conquered them, the Afghans sacked them, the British and Russians carved them up like a Christmas turkey. And yet here we are, in the 21st century, and Iran is still here. Not just here, thriving, defiant, impossible to ignore. Every single empire that conquered Iran eventually collapsed. Every foreign dynasty that seized the throne eventually became Persian. This is the story of a civilization that discovered something more powerful than armies, more enduring than empires, more devastating than any weapon of war. Iran learned how to conquer its conquerors. And that is why, after 4,000 years of continuous history, the Persian heartland remains unbroken, unkillable, eternal. This is not a story about military victories. This is a story about cultural survival. And it just might be the most important lesson history has ever taught. We are raised on a very specific origin story of civilization. The Greeks invented democracy, the Romans built law, the West carried the torch of progress forward. But this narrative conveniently ignores the fact that centuries before Athens built the Parthenon, before Rome was anything more than a swampy village on the Tiber, there was already an empire stretching from the Nile to the Indus, from the steppes of Central Asia to the shores of the Mediterranean. And that empire was Persian. The Iranian plateau is a harsh mistress, ringed by mountains, dominated by deserts, blessed with few navigable rivers. It seems like the last place on earth where a great civilization should emerge. And yet this very harshness forged something remarkable. The people who settled here around 3,000 years ago, the Medes, the Persians, the Parthians, learned early that survival required more than brute strength. It required organization, it required vision, and above all, it required the ability to unite disparate peoples under a single, compelling idea. That idea arrived in the form of a prophet whose name most Westerners cannot pronounce and whose teachings most have never heard. Zarathustra, or Zoroaster as the Greeks called him, lived sometime between 1500 and 500 BCE. Historians still argue about the exact date, and he revolutionized human thought. Before the Hebrews wrote down their scriptures, before the Buddha achieved enlightenment, Zoroaster preached a universe divided between good and evil, light and darkness, truth and lies. He taught that humans have free will, that they must choose their side in this cosmic battle, and that at the end of time, good would triumph. Heaven and hell, angels and demons, the coming Savior, the final judgment. These ideas that would later define Judaism, Christianity, and Islam were first articulated on the windswept plateaus of ancient Iran. But Zoroaster gave the Iranians something even more powerful than theology. He gave them a moral framework that would define their civilization for millennia. The concept of Asha, truth, righteousness, cosmic order, became the foundation of Persian identity. To be Iranian was to stand on the side of light against darkness, to uphold truth against the lie. This wasn't nationalism as we understand it. It was something older and stranger, a civilizational mission, a belief that Iran was the moral center of the universe. The first man to translate this belief into world power was Cyrus the Great. In 559 BCE, this king of a minor Persian tribe inherited a kingdom no larger than a single province. 30 years later, he ruled the largest empire the world had ever seen. But what makes Cyrus remarkable isn't the extent of his conquests, it's how he conducted them. When he conquered Babylon in 539 BCE, he didn't enslave the population or destroy their temples. Instead, he freed the captive peoples, including the Jews who had been exiled there for generations. He proclaimed religious freedom throughout his empire. He respected local customs and laws. The Cyrus cylinder, now housed in the British Museum, has been called the first declaration of human rights in history. This was something genuinely new under the sun. The idea that a conqueror could rule through tolerance rather than terror, that diversity could be a source of strength rather than weakness. Cyrus's successors, Darius, Xerxes, the great Achaemenid kings, built upon this foundation. They constructed a road network that spanned their empire from Sardis to Susa, with relay stations where royal messengers could change horses and carry messages faster than any communication system before the telegraph. They invented the concept of provincial government, with local satraps administering regions while remaining loyal to the central throne. They created the first multinational empire, where Greeks and Egyptians and Babylonians and Jews all coexisted under a single roof. The ceremonial capital at Persepolis, with its reliefs showing representatives of every subject nation bringing tribute to the King of Kings, was not propaganda, it was policy. Iran would rule not by erasing differences, but by incorporating them. This is the secret that would save Iran again and again across the centuries. They learned early what most empires never understand. You cannot destroy a culture by force. You can burn its cities, you can kill its kings, you can scatter its people. And within a generation, it will rise again, transformed but unbroken. But if you can absorb that culture, if you can make its strengths your own while preserving its essence, then you become unconquerable. The Achaemenids didn't just rule their subjects. They learned from them, adopted their gods alongside their own, married their princesses, and created a synthesis that was greater than any of its parts. And then Alexander came. In 334 BCE, a 22-year-old Macedonian king crossed into Asia with an army of 40,000 men and a burning ambition to humble the Persian Empire. Within 4 years, he had done the impossible. At Granicus, at Issus, at Gaugamela, he shattered the armies of Darius III. He burned Persepolis in a drunken rage, or perhaps a calculated act of revenge for Xerxes' burning of Athens a century and a half before. Darius was murdered by his own officers. The Achaemenid Empire, after 2.5 centuries, was no more. Alexander seemed to have conquered everything. But something strange happened. As he pressed deeper into the Iranian heartland, he began to change. He started wearing Persian robes. He adopted Persian court ceremonies. He married a Bactrian princess and encouraged his officers to do the same. When he died in Babylon in 323 BCE, aged just 32, he left behind an empire divided among his generals, but also a puzzle. Who had really conquered whom? The Seleucid kings who inherited the eastern portion of Alexander's empire ruled from Mesopotamia and adopted Persian administrative practices wholesale. Greek became the language of the court, but Persian culture endured beneath the surface, adapting, waiting. Within 2 centuries, a new Iranian dynasty, the Parthians, had pushed the Greeks out entirely and restored Iranian rule from the Euphrates to Afghanistan. The Parthian Empire would last 500 years and fight Rome to a standstill. At the Battle of Carrhae in 53 BCE, the Parthians annihilated 7 Roman legions and captured their standards, a humiliation that haunted Rome for generations. They developed the famous Parthian shot, where mounted archers would retreat while firing backward over their shoulders, an impossible technique that their enemies could never master. But more importantly, they preserved Iranian identity through half a millennium of external pressure, acting as a barrier between the Mediterranean world and the deep interior of Asia. When the Parthians finally fell in 224 CE, it was to another Iranian dynasty, the Sassanids, who would revive the glory of the Achaemenids and proclaim themselves the legitimate heirs of Cyrus and Darius. The Sassanid Empire was a golden age of Iranian civilization. They built magnificent palaces, developed sophisticated theological systems, and created art that would influence everything from Byzantine mosaics to Islamic geometric patterns. They fought Rome and its Byzantine successors for 4 centuries, 2 evenly matched superpowers locked in an eternal chess game across the mountains of Mesopotamia. But in the early 7th century, something unprecedented emerged from the deserts of Arabia. A new faith, carried by warriors who believed they had been commanded by God Himself to spread His word. The armies of Islam swept out of the peninsula like a wildfire, and in a single generation, they would transform the entire ancient world. The Arab conquest of Iran is one of the most dramatic turning points in human history. Between 633 and 654 CE, the Sassanid Empire, which had stood for 400 years and had fought Rome to exhaustion, collapsed completely. At the Battle of Qadisiyah in 636, the Arab general Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas defeated a Sassanid army 3 times his size. The legendary war elephant de George, which had terrified earlier enemies, was killed by Arab arrows. The Sassanid treasury accumulated over centuries was captured and sent back to Medina. The last Sassanid king, Yazdegerd III, spent years fleeing from city to city, trying to raise armies that never came, until he was finally murdered by a miller in 651 CE for the sake of his crown. Iran was conquered more thoroughly than it had ever been before. The new rulers brought a new religion, a new holy language, a new legal system, a new calendar. Surely this was the end. Surely Persian civilization would be swallowed whole by this overwhelming force. Any other nation might have disappeared entirely. But Iran was not any other nation. What happened over the following 3 centuries remains one of the most remarkable cultural transformations in history. The Persians converted to Islam, gradually at first, then in overwhelming numbers. But they didn't simply become Arabs. Instead, they made Islam Persian. Persian scholars became the foremost interpreters of Islamic theology. Persian administrators ran the caliphate. The Barmakid family of Persian viziers effectively controlled the Abbasid Empire for generations. Persian poets revolutionized Islamic literature, developing new forms and styles that would spread across the entire Muslim world. Persian scientists and philosophers, men like Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, and Al-Razi, became the leading minds of the Islamic Golden Age. And crucially, the Persian language not only survived, it flourished. While Arabic became the language of religion and law, Persian became the language of poetry, of literature, of the court. The epic Shahnameh, written by the poet Ferdowsi around 1010 CE, is one of the longest poems ever composed in human history. Over 50,000 couplets retelling the mythic and historical past of Iran from creation to the Arab conquest. Ferdowsi explicitly set out to preserve Persian language and culture against the threat of Arabization, and he succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. The Shahnameh became the foundational text of Persian identity, a cultural touchstone that would unite Iranians for 1,000 years. Its heroes, Rostam, Sohrab, Siavash, became as real to ordinary people as the kings who ruled them. The Arabs had conquered Iran with the sword, But Iran conquered Islam with the pen. And then came an enemy that made the Arabs look like gentle visitors. In 1219, Genghis Khan turned his attention westward toward the Islamic world. The Mongol invasions were not warfare as anyone had known it. They were extermination. The Mongol armies moved like a force of nature, annihilating everything in their path. When the city of Nishapur resisted, every living creature within its walls was killed. Men, women, children, even cats and dogs. The heads of the dead were stacked into pyramids, separated by gender so they could be counted more easily. When Baghdad, the greatest city in the Islamic world, fell in 1258, the caliph was rolled in a carpet and trampled to death by horses. The House of Wisdom, which had preserved and translated the knowledge of Greece and Persia and India for 5 centuries, was destroyed. Its books thrown into the Tigris River until the water ran black with ink. Some estimates suggest that 90% of the Iranian population died in the Mongol conquests. Tens of millions of people. This was not mere conquest. This was apocalypse. And yet, once again, Iran refused to die. The Mongol Ilkhans who settled in Iran gradually adopted Persian language, Persian culture, Persian administrative systems, and eventually, Persian religion. They converted to Islam within 3 generations. Persian poets like Rumi and Hafez wrote some of the greatest works in human literature during and after the Mongol period. Persian architects rebuilt the shattered cities. Persian bureaucrats ran the new empire with the same techniques they had used for 1,000 years. The pattern repeated itself again and again. The Timurids came. Tamerlane, who built towers of skulls and boasted that he was the scourge of God, and their descendants became the greatest patrons of Persian art the world had ever seen. The Turkic tribes who conquered Iran adopted Persian as their court language, employed Persian ministers, and were absorbed into the Iranian cultural sphere within generations. The Great Synthesis came under the Safavid dynasty, which ruled Iran from 1501 to 1736. Shah Ismail I, their founder, accomplished something that would permanently reshape Iran. He imposed Shia Islam as the state religion. This was a political masterstroke as much as a religious one. By making Iran distinctively Shia in a predominantly Sunni Islamic world, the Safavids created a new marker of Iranian identity that separated them from their Ottoman and Uzbek neighbors. Shah Abbas the Great built Isfahan into one of the most beautiful cities on earth, with its magnificent mosques and palaces and bridges that drew visitors from across the world. The Safavid period was another golden age, a time when Iranian art, architecture, and literature reached new heights of sophistication. But the 18th and 19th centuries brought new threats that could not be absorbed or outlasted. The European powers had developed technologies and organizational capacities that the old empires could not match. Iran, under the Qajar dynasty, became a pawn in the great game between Britain and Russia. Its territory nibbled away, its sovereignty compromised, its resources exploited. The discovery of oil in 1908 made Iran strategically vital to the Western powers, but the benefits flowed outward while the people remained poor. The humiliation of this period left scars that have not yet healed. The 20th century was a time of violent oscillation. Reza Shah Pahlavi seized power in a coup in 1921 and attempted to modernize Iran on the Turkish model, secularizing education, forbidding the veil, building railroads and factories. In 1935, he officially changed the country's international name from Persia to Iran, a statement that this was a nation looking forward, not backward. His son Mohammad Reza Shah continued this program with American backing, but his increasingly autocratic rule and his dependence on foreign powers bred resentment. When Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh nationalized Iranian oil in 1951, asserting Iran's right to control its own resources, the CIA and MI6 organized a coup that restored the Shah to power. This intervention was a turning point, demonstrating to Iranians that their government was not truly sovereign, that foreign hands still pulled the strings. The explosion came in 1979. The Islamic Revolution was one of the most surprising events of the 20th century. A mass uprising that drew together Islamists, leftists, nationalists, and ordinary people against the Shah's regime. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a 77-year-old cleric who had been exiled for his opposition to the Shah, returned to Tehran to be greeted by crowds of millions. Within months, Iran had transformed from a secular monarchy into an Islamic republic. The American embassy was seized. 52 hostages were held for over a year, and Iran declared itself an enemy of both superpowers, neither East nor West. What has happened since is a story still unfolding. The devastating war with Iraq from 1980 to 1988, which killed hundreds of thousands on both sides, the ongoing tensions with the United States and its allies, the nuclear program that has brought sanctions and isolation, the protests and counter-protests, the reformists and hardliners, the young generation straining against restrictions imposed before they were born.
Iran today is a country of contradictions, ancient and modern, religious and secular, isolated yet globally connected. But beneath all this turbulence, something older endures. The Persian language, refined over centuries, remains the mother tongue of 80 million people. The poetry of Hafez and Rumi is recited at weddings and funerals, memorized by school children, quoted by politicians. The idea of Iran as a distinct civilization, not merely a nation-state, but a cultural universe with its own center of gravity, persists. The Nowruz festival, the Persian New Year, has survived Zoroastrianism, Islam, secularism, and Islamic revolution. It is still celebrated by hundreds of millions across a region that stretches from Kurdistan to Kazakhstan. The lesson of Iranian history is both simple and profound. Empires rise and fall. Armies conquer and are conquered in turn. Technologies become obsolete. Economies collapse. Political systems are overthrown. But a civilization that has developed deep cultural roots, a distinctive language, a powerful literature, a sense of unique identity and historical mission, that civilization can outlast anything. Iran was conquered by the Greeks, and the Greeks became Persian. Iran was conquered by the Arabs, and the Arabs became vehicles for Persian culture. Iran was conquered by the Mongols, by the Turks, by the Afghans, and each time the conquerors were absorbed, transformed, made Iranian. This is not a story of military invincibility. Iran has lost more battles than almost any civilization in history. This is a story of something harder to define and harder to destroy. Call it cultural gravity. Call it civilizational depth. Call it the Persian genius for survival. Whatever you name it, it has proven more durable than steel, more deadly than any sword. 4,000 years ago, on the harsh plateau between mountains and desert, a civilization was born that would help shape the religions of half the world, that would produce some of humanity's greatest poetry and philosophy and art, that would prove again and again that some things cannot be killed by violence alone. Alexander burned Persepolis, and Persian culture rose from the ashes. The Mongols turned Iran into a graveyard, and within a century, Persian poets were writing verses in the Mongol court. They came as conquerors. They left as carriers of a civilization they could not destroy.
That is the secret of Iran. That is why, after everything, the invasions, the revolutions, the sanctions, the wars, the flame that Zoroaster lit on the Iranian plateau still burns.